My brothers and sisters in the light, I am going to teach you 3 Hebrew words today that will change your relationship with money forever. 3 specific words that the Essenes spoke over their resources every single day for over 200 years. 3 words that created a protective seal around their finances so powerful that the community never experienced poverty, never experienced lack, never experienced the mysterious drain that plagues so many believers today. These are not random words I have chosen. These are not words I invented. These are the exact words preserved in the Dead Sea Scrolls that the ancient community used to protect their wealth from spiritual forces that seek to steal, drain, and destroy financial blessing. I am going to reveal these 3 words to you today. I am going to teach you exactly how to pronounce them. I am going to explain what each word means and why it carries protective power. And I am going to show you the specific way the Essenes spoke these words over their money, a practice you can begin immediately. But I must tell you something important first. The 3rd word is the one that activates the other 2. Without the 3rd word, the first 2 words have limited effect. With the 3rd word, all 3 combine into a protective declaration that seals your resources completely. The 3rd word is the one most people have never heard. The 3rd word is the one that transforms this practice from mere religious ritual into supernatural protection. The Essenes understood something that most modern believers have forgotten. Words carry power. Spoken words, especially words spoken in Hebrew, the language of creation, carry creative and protective force. When God created the universe, He spoke it into existence. When He established covenants, He spoke the terms. When He blessed, He used specific words. The language itself carries divine frequency. This is why the Essenes preserved certain prayers and declarations in Hebrew even as the common people shifted to Aramaic. They understood that the original language maintained power that translation could diminish. The 3 words I am about to teach you have been preserved in their original Hebrew form for exactly this reason. Let me give you the context of how this practice developed and why you can trust its authenticity. The Essene community lived in deliberate separation from the corruption of mainstream society. They rejected the greed and materialism that characterized the cities. They rejected the compromised religious establishment that had made peace with Roman occupation. They pursued purity in every area of life, including their relationship with money and resources. But separation from corrupt society did not mean poverty. The Essenes were not ascetics who rejected material provision. They believed that God provided abundantly for those who lived according to His principles. They simply believed that provision needed to be protected from spiritual forces that sought to drain and diminish it. Through study of ancient texts and direct revelation, the Essene teachers identified 3 Hebrew words that, when spoken together over resources, created what they called a hedge of protection. This hedge functioned like an invisible barrier around money, preventing wasteful drain, blocking theft, both physical and spiritual, and creating conditions for multiplication rather than diminishment. Every member of the community learned these 3 words. Every member spoke them daily over whatever resources they possessed. The practice was universal and consistent, and the results were documented. The community maintained stable provision for over 200 years, despite living in one of the most economically volatile regions of the ancient world. The practice was eventually suppressed when institutional Christianity decided that such direct spiritual practices were unnecessary. The Church taught that believers should simply trust God for provision without engaging in specific protective practices. But this teaching served institutional interests. If believers could protect their own resources through direct spiritual practice, they had less need for institutional mediation. So the practice was discouraged and eventually forgotten by mainstream Christianity. But it was preserved. The scrolls maintained the 3 words. The practice survived among small communities who kept the ancient ways. And now, after 2,000 years, these 3 words are available to you. Before I reveal the words themselves, I need to pause and speak to you directly. You just learned that there exists a specific Hebrew practice for protecting your money. Three words that create a spiritual hedge around your resources. A practice used successfully for over 200 years by a community that never experienced the financial drain that afflicts so many believers today. If you have watched money disappear from your possession without explanation, if you have experienced that sinking feeling of having less than you should have, less than the mathematics justify, if you have tithed faithfully, prayed consistently, trusted genuinely, yet still experienced financial instability and unexplained loss. This is not because God has abandoned you. This is not because your faith is insufficient. This is not because you are being punished for unknown sins. This is because your resources lack the protection that the ancient believers applied daily. Your money is exposed to forces that seek to drain it, and you have never been given the words that create protective covering. The same lack of protection that drains your finances is affecting other areas of your life as well. The same spiritual exposure that allows money to leak from your possession allows peace to leak from your heart, joy to leak from your days, health to leak from your body, blessing to leak from your relationships. The hedge of protection is not just about money. It is about everything in your life that should remain but keeps draining away. There is a complete protocol that builds full protection around every area of your life. The Essene Wealth Code contains these three words along with 20 other practices that create comprehensive spiritual covering over your finances, your health, your relationships, your peace. I have taught these words to thousands who came to me with the same confusion and loss you may be experiencing right now. I have watched people who lost money constantly suddenly experience financial stability within weeks of beginning the daily practice. Not because their income increased, because their protection increased. If you do not speak protection over your resources, the drain continues. Each day without the hedge is another day of exposure, another day of leakage, another day of loss that should not be occurring. The forces that drain do not rest. They do not take days off. They work constantly against unprotected resources. The link is in the description. The Essene Wealth Code, 21 days to build complete protection around your financial life. Click, read, decide if you want to continue with exposed resources or finally speak the protection that was preserved for you. Now let me reveal the three Hebrew words. Listen carefully to the pronunciation. Write them down if you need to. These words will become part of your daily practice. The first word is Shomer. Shomer is pronounced with the emphasis on the first syllable, Shomer. It comes from the Hebrew root meaning to guard, to watch, to keep, to protect. When God placed Adam in the garden, the word used for his responsibility was from this same root, to keep the garden, to guard it, to protect it. Shomer invokes the principle of divine guarding. When you speak this word over your resources, you are invoking the same protective attention that God placed over Eden. You are declaring that your money is under divine watch, that heavenly eyes are upon it, that angelic protection surrounds it. But Shomer alone is not sufficient. Guarding without sealing leaves gaps. This is why the second word is essential. The second word is chatam. Chatam is pronounced with a guttural ch sound that comes from the back of the throat, chatam. It means to seal, to close, to complete. When a king sealed a document with his signet ring, he used an action derived from this word. The seal meant the document was complete, authoritative, and protected from tampering. Chatam invokes the principle of divine sealing. When you speak this word over your resources, you are declaring that they are sealed by divine authority, closed against unauthorized access, protected from tampering by spiritual forces that seek to drain them. Shomer guards, Chatam seals. But these two words alone are still incomplete. They describe what you want to happen but do not invoke the power that makes it happen. This is why the third word is essential. This is the word that activates the other two. This is the word most people have never heard. The third word is B'Shem Adonai. This is actually a phrase of two words, but the Essenes counted it as one unit because it was always spoken together, B'Shem Adonai. It means in the name of the Lord. It invokes divine authority directly. It declares that the protection being spoken is not personal wishful thinking, but authorized declaration backed by the power of God Himself. When you speak Shomer, you invoke guarding. When you speak chatam, you invoke sealing. When you speak B'Shem Adonai, you invoke the authority that makes the guarding and sealing effective. Without this third element, you are asking for protection. With this third element, you are declaring protection with borrowed authority that cannot be resisted by any spiritual force. The complete phrase, spoken in order, is Shomer, Chatam, B'Shem Adonai. Say it with me now. Shomer, Chatam, B'Shem Adonai. These three words together mean guarded, sealed, in the name of the Lord. When spoken over your resources, they create the hedge of protection that the Essenes maintained for over 200 years. Now let me teach you exactly how the Essenes spoke these words over their money. The method matters as much as the words themselves. It is not enough to know the words. You must know how to speak them properly for maximum effect. First, they held their money or purse in their hands. Physical contact was essential, not optional. The words were not spoken into the air toward some distant, abstract concept of finances. They were spoken directly over the actual physical resources you possess. Hold your wallet. Hold your purse. Hold cash in your hands if you have it. The physical connection focuses the declaration. It directs the protective power to specific, tangible resources rather than diffusing it into vague generality. Second, they spoke the words audibly, not silently. This is crucial and non-negotiable. Silent intention has some power, but spoken declaration has far more. The vibration of the words moving through air carries creative force. This is why God spoke creation into existence rather than thinking it into being. He said, "Let there be light." The words carried power that thought alone does not carry. When you speak Shomer, Chatam, B'Shem Adonai out loud, even if quietly, you are releasing creative force through the vibration of sound. Third, they spoke the words 3 times in succession. The repetition was not superstition or magical incantation, it was emphasis and establishment. In Hebrew thought, threefold repetition signifies completion, authority, and permanence. When Isaiah heard the angels around God's throne, they did not cry holy once. They cried holy, holy, holy. The 3 repetitions established the declaration firmly in the spiritual realm, leaving no ambiguity about the intent. Fourth, they visualized a protective covering forming around their resources as they spoke. The mental image combined with the spoken word created synergy that strengthened the effect. As you speak the words, picture golden light surrounding your wallet. Imagine an impenetrable shield forming around your resources. See in your mind the hedge of protection taking shape with each word you speak. This visualization engages your imagination in partnership with your voice, multiplying the power of the declaration. Fifth, they spoke with conviction, not doubt. The tone of voice mattered. Words spoken hesitantly, apologetically, or with uncertainty had diminished effect. The Essenes spoke their protective declarations with authority, with confidence, with the assurance that they were exercising legitimate spiritual power that had been given to them by God. When you speak these words, speak them like you mean them. Speak them like a king issuing a decree, not like a servant making a timid request. The full practice takes only seconds once you have learned it. Hold your wallet or money in your hands. Speak with authority. Shomer, Chatam, B'Shem Adonai. Repeat 2 more times for a total of 3 declarations. Visualize protective light surrounding your resources with each repetition. Feel the conviction in your voice that this protection is real and effective. The Essenes performed this practice every morning before any other financial activity, and every time they received new income from any source. Consistency was essential to the practice's effectiveness. Protection that is applied intermittently has gaps. One day of protection does not carry forward to the next, but protection that is applied daily builds and strengthens over time, creating an increasingly impenetrable barrier around your resources. If you are finding value in these ancient secrets, take a moment to subscribe to this channel and tap the notification bell. Every week, I reveal another practice from the caves of Qumran that the mainstream church never taught you. and do something right now. In the comments below, type, "I speak protection." When you type this, you are committing to begin speaking these 3 Hebrew words over your money daily. Type it now, "I speak protection." Let me tell you about a man named David who learned these 3 words, and what happened when he began speaking them consistently over his resources. His story demonstrates that this practice works regardless of your level of religious devotion or spiritual understanding. David was a successful businessman by worldly standards. He had built a profitable company over 20 years of hard work. He earned substantial income, more than most people would ever see. He owned property, both personal and investment. He had a diversified portfolio of stocks and bonds. By every external measure, he should have been financially secure, comfortable, free from any worry about money. But David experienced something that confused and frustrated him constantly, something that no amount of business success could solve. Money seemed to slip away from his control despite his careful, meticulous management. The leakage was invisible, but relentless. Investments that should have grown according to every reasonable projection would stagnate for months or decline for reasons that analysts could not explain. His portfolio managers were baffled. The market conditions were favorable. The selections were sound, but his investments underperformed consistently. Business deals that seemed certain, contracts that were virtually signed, partnerships that were all but confirmed would fall through at the last moment for inexplicable reasons. Clients would change their minds overnight. Partners would back out without explanation. Opportunities that seemed locked would evaporate like morning mist. Expenses always exceeded projections no matter how carefully he budgeted. He would plan for a certain amount, add a generous buffer for unexpected costs, and still find himself spending more than the inflated estimate. The overruns were never dramatic enough to be alarming, but they were consistent enough to be draining. He hired the best financial advisors money could buy. He consulted with top accountants. He brought in business consultants to analyze his operations. He tracked every expense meticulously, reviewed every investment decision, examined every business practice. No one could identify where the leakage was occurring. The professionals assured him his financial management was sound, even exemplary. His practices were textbook correct. His decisions were well-reasoned. His tracking was meticulous. Yet the results did not match the management. Something was draining his resources that no expert could identify or explain. David was a believer in God, though not deeply religious by any measure. He attended church occasionally, mostly on holidays or when his wife insisted. He believed in God in a general, comfortable sense that did not demand much from his daily life. He prayed sometimes, usually when he needed something. But he had never considered that his financial struggles might have a spiritual dimension. He thought of money as purely material, governed entirely by economic principles and careful management. Finance was numbers, strategy, discipline. It had nothing to do with spiritual matters. The idea that invisible forces might affect his bank account would have seemed absurd to him. When David first heard about the 3 Hebrew words, he was skeptical, bordering on dismissive. A friend who had experienced financial transformation shared the practice with him. David listened politely, but internally dismissed it as superstition dressed in religious language. Speaking ancient words over his wallet, standing in his bedroom holding a leather billfold and pronouncing Hebrew phrases. It sounded like something from a late-night infomercial, not a legitimate financial practice. It seemed too simple, too strange, too disconnected from the real-world complexities of modern finance. But his friend was persistent, and something about his friend's testimony was hard to dismiss. This was not a gullible person. This was a sharp businessman who had experienced the same mysterious leakage and had found a solution that actually worked. David decided to try the practice as an experiment, approaching it with the same analytical mindset he applied to business decisions. For 30 days, he would hold his wallet each morning and speak the 3 Hebrew words, Shomer, Chatam, B'Shem Adonai, 3 times each morning, with the visualization of protective covering that his friend had described. He would track results as carefully as he tracked any business metric, and at the end of 30 days, he would evaluate whether the practice produced measurable change. The first week, he felt slightly foolish, even embarrassed. A successful businessman, respected in his industry, standing in his bedroom before dawn, holding his leather wallet, speaking Hebrew words he barely understood and certainly could not translate. If his business colleagues could see him, they would question his sanity. But he had committed to 30 days as a fair experiment, and David was not someone who abandoned commitments. He continued despite his embarrassment. The second week, he noticed something subtle. A business deal that had been stalling for months, trapped in endless negotiations and delays, suddenly moved forward without additional effort on his part. The other party simply decided to proceed. No new information, no additional persuasion. They just agreed. Additionally, an invoice from 2 years ago that he had written off as uncollectible was unexpectedly paid in full. The client called out of nowhere to settle the debt. Small things. Coincidences, perhaps, but David tracked them carefully in his evaluation journal. The third week, the changes became harder to dismiss as random coincidence. His investment portfolio showed growth for the first time in over 6 months. His monthly expense report revealed that spending had come in under budget for the first time he could remember. An expense he had been dreading, a major equipment replacement, turned out to be covered by an extended warranty he had purchased years ago and completely forgotten about. The fourth week, David stopped calling the changes coincidental. The pattern was too consistent to be random variation. Money was behaving differently than it had before he began the practice. The mysterious leakage that no expert could identify seemed to have stopped. Resources that had always slipped away through invisible cracks were remaining in his possession. His month-end financial review showed more retained income than any month in the previous 2 years. His investments had recovered losses they had carried for quarters. His business pipeline was stronger than it had been in years. By the end of 30 days, David was convinced, not because of theological understanding or spiritual awakening, simply because of documented, measurable results. The 3 Hebrew words had accomplished what financial advisors, accountants, consultants, and meticulous personal management could not. They had stopped the drain that he could not identify or explain through any natural means. He continued the practice permanently, every single morning without exception, every time he received significant income or closed a major deal. The 3 words became as automatic as checking his email or reviewing his calendar. Shomer, Chatham, B'Shem Adonai. His financial life stabilized in ways it never had before despite all his previous sophisticated efforts. The mysterious leakage stopped completely. The unexplained losses ceased. His resources remained protected and began to grow consistently, steadily, predictably for the first time in his business career. David did not become dramatically more religious after this experience. He did not suddenly start attending church every Sunday or reading scripture for an hour each morning, but he recognized something he had never understood before. There was a spiritual dimension to finance that he had ignored his entire adult life. The 3 Hebrew words connected him to that dimension in a simple, practical way that produced practical, measurable results. He told his story to other business people he trusted. Most were skeptical, as he had been, but those who tried the practice reported similar results. The protection was real. The words worked. The ancient practice was as effective in the modern world as it had been 2,000 years ago. My brothers and sisters in the light, you now have what David discovered. 3 Hebrew words that create a protective hedge around your resources. Shomer, divine guarding over your money. Chatham, divine sealing of your resources. B'Shem Adonai, divine authority that makes the protection effective. Speak these words over your wallet every morning. Speak them every time you receive income. Speak them 3 times with visualization of protective covering. Do this consistently and watch what happens to the unexplained drain that has plagued your finances. If you are ready for complete transformation, the Essene Wealth Code will guide you through this practice and 20 others that build comprehensive protection around your financial life. The link is in the description. Before you leave, type one more time. I speak protection. Let this be your commitment to begin the daily practice of speaking divine protection over your resources. May the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob guard your money with vigilant eyes. May he seal your resources with royal authority. May his name be the power that protects everything you possess. Shomer, Chatam, B'Shem Adonai. Go in peace, go in power, go in prosperity. Until next time, this is Rabbi Enoch, keeper of the scrolls, servant of the light. Shalom.